Hello everybody and welcome to another new espresso week. Today we are going to take a look at Topeca coffee roasters. For those of you that don't know or aren't familiar, haven't seen the videos before, generally what I will do is I use a specialty coffee subscription. They don't sponsor my channel, I don't get paid to do this. I pay full price just like anybody else would. I use Misto Box, but there's some other good ones that I've considered trying, like Trade Coffee Company has just come out. It's nice because it's all specialty coffee roasters and you can kind of choose your favorite profile, what you like. I always choose espresso, and so then they kind of send me on a regular schedule new espressos to try. The great thing about that is I never know what coffee's coming, and it allows me to taste a lot of different coffees and try a lot of new roasters. Aside from the roasters where I'm going and buying the coffee and are having it in the cafe or buying it directly from the cafe. So it's just kind of a unique way to try new coffees. So the reason for all of that backstory with Topeca that we're taking a look at today is that my day job has me going to Tulsa a couple times a year. So and if you've never been to Tulsa, it's actually kind of a cool city. Next time I'm there, I'll do a video on some of the good coffee shops around the area and just Tulsa in general. Pretty unique place, especially coming from Colorado. It's not anything like what I expected. However, squirrel moment. Yeah, so we're gonna be looking at Topeca. So interesting enough, when this coffee showed up to my door, I was like, I recognize that name. And I immediately thought Topeca as in Topeka, Kansas, because as you're here in Colorado, we're next to Kansas. So I immediately thought Topeka, Kansas. And then we looked them up and I was like, Topeka in Tulsa. Now, what's interesting is that I have been to their downtown location multiple times. Great coffee shop. What is also interesting is that they are a family that started in coffee back in like the 1850s in El Salvador, living on a volcano. So they kind of unique, rich history of coffee with the family-owned business here. So that's also pretty cool. So I was actually kind of excited because I haven't been to Tulsa since it's probably been 8 months or so, and I haven't been there in a while, and I actually didn't go to Topeca last time. There's another roaster there called Cirque Coffee Roasters that I really like, and I went there, and I wasn't staying downtown this time. So let's get into it, because I've spent a lot of time just rambling about how I got this coffee and why it's interesting. So what are my thoughts on the Zingo Espresso blend? So the nice thing about this coffee that I noticed right away is that I've had a few coffees that have come to me on this subscription that I didn't select. They've just been kind of coming to me randomly that have been, how do we say, a little bit overdeveloped. So we start to get that tinge of roastiness. The sugars are really kind of caramelized. We're kind of starting to cross that line into a darker roasted coffee. And I haven't really enjoyed it. I think the last one that I got was Populous. I'll put a little card here so you can check that out if you want to review that one. Similar kind of coffee. Was good, but just wasn't great. What I liked about this one is that I feel if you're new to espresso is such a fickle beast, I should say, that a lot of times, depending upon the coffee, you have to have everything perfect. So the coffee has to be perfectly dialed in. If you're off just a little bit, it's going to taste really sour, or maybe you aren't getting really much taste at all. There just isn't a lot of room or a lot of margin for error. I feel with this blend, there was none. It was developed perfectly. So again, when I split the beans, as I pulled them through the hopper, we had really good bean development through the coffee. So nice, good development. And there was no heavily caramelized sugar flavor. And if you haven't seen my videos before, what I generally mean by that is that the sugars aren't starting to get that roasty flavor, where the roast kind of starts to predominate the coffee flavor. And here, they actually know like brown spice, cocoa, and blackberry. I definitely got a lot of cocoa and kind of that brown spice. So the reason that is great is I feel that it adds a great body to the espresso. I think espressos are the best when they have that good kind of chocolatey, nutty base. And looking at the two coffees that they used in this, they used a Brazil and an Ethiopia. So one is natural and one is a pulped natural. Now, if I had to guess, I would guess that the order of the processing is backwards from what the coffees are on top. So if I had to guess, the Brazil is actually the pulp natural. And I say that only because that's generally the common practice for pulp naturals. You see a lot of them coming out of Brazil. I have had a really great fully natural Brazil that ironically I had gotten from a buddy that went to the Starbucks Reserve Roastery in Seattle. I also just did a video on Seattle coffee. I was just spent a few days there touring, I think, 6 different cafes. So if you haven't, check that video out. But the Brazil, we see a lot of, so on that note, I have had fully natural processed Brazils, but generally if you see a Brazil that's outside of a wash process, it's generally a pulped natural. So I have another video that's all about processing types and what they mean and why they're important and why you should look at that. So take a look at that here. So if I had to guess, the natural would be the Ethiopian. The other reason that I would say that is because a lot of natural processed coffees come from Ethiopia. I'm not sure if that's just a cultural thing or just a general way that they process coffees. Maybe they're trying to conserve water. I'm not sure why it is, but we generally see that Ethiopia has a lot of natural processed coffees. So again, if I had to guess, the natural was the Ethiopian and the pulp natural was Brazil. So being that neither one of them were washed, I would expect them to be a lot more complex and sweet and have that berry flavor come forward. I didn't get too much blackberry. Blackberries for me are generally very kind of tart. So if you think of a blackberry, the acids that are in that blackberry kind of make your lips kind of pucker kind of thing. So I don't know that I really got that. I did kind of get that cane sugar sweetness where I feel that most pulp naturals coffees that I've had, they tend to lend into more of like, it's almost like you've added cane sugar into your coffee. It's just a little bit sweeter. So I definitely got that. Didn't really get too much blackberry, but I did get a nice sweetness or acidity that did cut through the milk. So with all espressos that I review, I always do a traditional cappuccino. So anywhere from 36 to 40 grams of espresso, and then 150 grams of dairy product. And in this case, I don't do regular dairy, I do alternative dairy, and I like oat milk. I prefer to use Oatly as well because I feel like it's the creamiest. So that is kind of my baseline. So for every coffee that I taste, I drink it the same way every time I prepare it, so I can really get to know the coffee over the week or two that I have for the bag, and so kind of give you a better review. So on that note and how I prepared it, they do have some preparation instructions on the side of the bag, but they just talk about brewing. They don't really give any espresso tips. Now, I could have called the cafe and said, how are you brewing this in your cafe? How are you serving it to your customers? Well, let's be honest, I'm too lazy for that. So I just, whenever they don't provide me on the website their brewing parameters for espresso, I start with my baseline, which is generally 18.5 grams in and about 38 grams out. And I try to do it relatively quick speaking. I try to get it a little bit quicker in the 25 to 26 second range if I can. A lot of coffees I've had when you start to pull them longer, they seem to taste a little bit better, more complete. However, with this coffee, I actually noticed that it took me a little bit to dial my grinder in. So I really kind of had to back the grind off as it was initially pouring at like 40 seconds or 42 seconds. What's interesting is generally I try not to waste the coffee, so I will taste it. So I will drink it. So I'll say, okay, cool. It went 42 seconds, so it took a long time to get that 36 to 38 grams of espresso. But I'll taste it because I want to know, how does the coffee perform? What is my leniency? Is there any margin for error when I'm brewing the coffee, or do I need to have it pretty much spot on every time I brew it? So with the first one that I pulled, it actually still tasted really good. And to be honest, I didn't notice too much difference from actually getting it dialed into that a little bit quicker extraction rate, 26, 27 seconds at 36 to 38 grams out versus 45 seconds. So this is another coffee that I feel if you're new to espresso, definitely check out because it just gives you more room, a bigger margin of error. So it will generally taste good regardless of how you're brewing it. So if you don't have your espresso machine dialed in, or say you're just getting started and you've spent all your money on a really nice grinder and you've got just a little $100 steam espresso machine, even if you're pulling with steam, it will probably, my assumption is that it'll still probably taste pretty good. Now, I didn't pull it with steam, so I can't say 100%. So if you do have a machine that just does steam, Please don't butcher me because I didn't taste it, so I'm not sure. But my assumption is how this coffee tasted kind of throughout the process. It was pretty consistent regardless of how I brewed it, which I think makes it a great espresso for especially somebody who's just getting into espresso and you don't want to waste a lot of coffee and you kind of want to learn and you still want to enjoy the coffee you're drinking as you're learning. So with that being said, definitely check out Topeca Coffee Roasters based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. This is their Zingo Espresso blend, and I think it's definitely a coffee worth spending your money on, especially if you're new to coffee and you'd like to try a coffee that will give you a little bit of leadway to kind of learn more about espresso. So as always, if you like this video or you found it helpful, please subscribe. Click the little notification bell so you get notified of new videos. That just helps me know that you're enjoying the content, and of course if you like it and you share it with somebody else, that also helps so I can keep creating more content for you and hopefully help you achieve cafe quality coffee at home. And as always, coffee, pedal, repeat.